this was the sort of main headline of the week through the legacy media, which was this idea that Justin Trudeau had been the victim of racist slurs, or that he had to cancel a fundraising event. So there was this $1,000 a plate fundraising event planned in Surrey, British Columbia on Tuesday afternoon. And before the event was even started, basically the Liberals claimed that Trudeau couldn't go. It was unsafe for him. And they claimed that it was because a crowd of protesters were making racist slurs. So there were racial slurs being hurled at the attendees and at the fundraisers. And Trudeau, who just got back from being in a war zone in Ukraine. Well, he was told it was too unsafe for him to attend this in-person event, so he would attend by Zoom instead. And you can see the headline there from the Canadian Press. It says Trudeau cancels appearance at event in BC after protesters hurl racial slurs. And of course, you can see it's the Canadian Press, which is a newswire service in Canada. So when something's written by the Canadian Press, you're going to see it all over the news, Harrison. You're going to see it in pretty much every major newspaper in the country. You're going to see it on CTV, on Global. Basically, they all subscribe to the Canadian Press, and they all run the exact same nonsense. There's so many interesting, again, levels to this story, because the entire thing wasn't verified. It wasn't a fact. I saw that you had tweeted, Harrison, something along the lines of, Canadian Press invents a story. It's even worse than that, because the Liberals invented it. The Liberals made a claim, and then the media ran with it without bothering to verify it. Like, what do you mean the racial slurs? Who was saying them? What were the racial slurs? And I know you poured through, I think it was hours of video footage, because there's lots of cell phone footage of this protest to verify exactly what was said and what these supposed racial slurs were, Harrison. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So the thing is that immediately as the story started to evolve and started to come out, the line from the legacy media, of course, the Canadian Press, who's a wire service, they put out the fact that there were racial slurs being thrown and hurled at attendees and at Trudeau. They kind of made Trudeau out to be the victim at the beginning of it as well. But of course, there was video evidence of all of this. There were journalists that were covering the protests. There were citizen journalists that were there, kind of half participating and half covering and documenting what was going on. And so, of course, when the reports came out, everyone started looking for video footage. And I'm sure the Liberal Party staffers that were tasked with coming up with this line were also looking at that footage, trying to find the video evidence that these anti-Trudeau protesters were being racist. Because, of course, Candice, we have seen these videos emerge from other protests, and we see how the media responds when accusations of racism get leveled at sort of anti-Trudeau protesters, anti-Jagmeet Singh protests. And whenever there's video footage, every Canadian basically has to see it, because it gets put out on social media to show people just how bad these anti-Trudeau protesters are. But there was no video footage, Candice. There's no evidence of racial slurs being hurled, as they say, at attendees or at Liberal Party members. And that was sort of that kind of became the story throughout the week, right, Candice? It was first, here are these horrible anti-Trudeau protesters once again being racist. Again, where have we seen the line of anti-Trudeau protesters being racist? It seems to be their playbook now. So that was the original story. Then slowly, outlets started to backtrack and started to change their story, because there was no evidence to back any of it up. So CBC, the day after, basically totally rewrote the story, rewrote their headline, took out the line about them being racist and made it an allegation. And John Kay over at Quillette, he tweeted this and basically drew the arrows, telling you how the CBC changed their story. So it went from Trudeau has to cancel the event because protesters were hurling racial slurs, to Trudeau cancels appearance at Surrey fundraiser over protest-related safety concerns. And then, of course, the rest of the story gets changed to try and cover their tracks. So the media goes out, calls anti-Trudeau protesters racist without evidence, runs with the story that the Liberals were giving them, Liberal Party staffers were giving them, and now they're having to backtrack, Candice. I mean, this just seems like something we've seen many times before. This is a recycled playbook. Throw out the horrible accusations and then backtrack because there's no evidence to back it up.
It's not journalism. It's like, the Liberals made a claim. The Liberals accused their opponents of being racist. This is a thing that we have heard the Liberals do 1,000 times over the past 10 years. That's their go-to shtick. People I don't like, equate to racist, and it's almost become a joke or a meme on the political right that's like racist has completely lost all meaning. But typically, the role of a journalist, Harrison, you know this, you went to journalism school, is to verify. So you don't just run a headline based on what a liberal MP told you. You could at least write alleges and liberals, right? Liberals allege racial slurs. No, they ran it as fact, as truth, that there were racial slurs, even though there's no such evidence. And it wasn't just the CBC that had to change their headline. The Canadian Press also changed their headline pretty much exactly like the CBC one that you just showed. You can see the side-by-side here. It went from the protesters were hurling racial slurs, which was unverified and untrue, to Trudeau cancels appearance at event in BC amid angry protests. So they're still trying to classify the protesters. Anyone who's anti-Trudeau is either a racist or just an angry conservative. And so those are sort of like the two boxes that they can put you in.